Oh.
And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, and autism. All of these are injuries that I never heard of when I was a kid. They were not part of the nomenclature. They weren't part of the dialogue. There was zero spent in this country treating chronic disease when my uncle was president. Today it's about $1.8 trillion annually. It's bankrupting our nation. 74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. So how are we going to maintain our global leadership with such a sick population? We have all these autoimmune diseases, these exotic diseases. And again, I never heard of juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease.
I never. Type 1 diabetes? Where did that come from?
What's up, guys? Today we are joined by the Democrats' secret weapon. He's an Afghan war veteran and the former Secretary of Transportation. He's also one of the first gay men to run for president. And today he's here to explain how he kept the planes in the sky, how billionaires legally dodge taxes, why Trump's new tariffs could be hurting America, what he ate in Afghanistan that made him gay, and most importantly, why every Republican National Convention Grindr is on fire. Give it up for Pete Buttigieg. You started a conversation when you sat down on the couch. You said that Lachlan should have died, which is not the first thing we often hear from a future president. He said Lachlan should have died in White Lotus. Talk to us. Like, this is a big time. I
hate to say it. I love him. He's a good kid, right?
Yeah.
But just from a narrative perspective, right? And having
from like doing that to his brother.
Yeah. And like, Jesus, we just got started. No, I mean, I think the dad has to sit with Cheston. My husband and I have been talking about this a lot. Like, the dad should have to sit with like what he did.
The guilt, yes.
Wait, who the fuck are we talking about? I have no idea. Was this a story?
And there were so many parallels to what happens with Tanya, where he's like floating, right, when he seems like he's dying or maybe sort of dead.
TV shows.
Yeah, I think just story-wise.
TV shows,
otherwise,
losers.
I don't have a lot of notes for this year's White Lotus.
I mean, it was incredible. Awesome. I guess the one thing would be, does anything really happen to the ultra wealthy? Yeah, maybe that's what he's trying to show.
Listen, I know that is my class privilege speaking, because now that I'm part of the wealthy elites, I just don't like to see criticism of it. But like, is White Lotus a good show? I feel like I've consumed so much media over the past 15 years that's like some allegory or whatever for capitalism bad and wealthy people bad, and it's like, oh my god, and the story's like, oh my god, the wealthy will do anything to destroy poor people's lives, and it's like, is this actually a good show? It has nothing to do with that? Oh, okay, never mind. Maybe that's just what they're talking about them.
Which is kind of what always
they always get away with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even the kid.
Yeah.
Because by the time they're on the boat, it's like none of that even happened, right?
Yeah. And then the poor security guards that are guarding the guy, they die.
Yeah.
No one talks about them.
No, I forgot about it. I didn't like her.
Those guys were assholes. They were mean to what's his name?
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
That's a good point.
They were bullies, dude.
You really fell in love with that.
Yeah, dude. He had such a pure heart. Don't bully this guy.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the three women seem fine after witnessing a mass shooting. Like they're just laughing. Right?
Just on the boat, having a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, in season 1, if you remember, the really rich kid like stabs the guy, and then he's just in the airport 20 minutes later or whatever. No questioning, no nothing. And I think that's kind of to Andrew's point. Is like, I think the point of that show is the ultra wealthy. One guy has his wife killed. Nothing seems to happen. They just kind of get away with it.
Right. But there is social mobility because Belinda joins the club, right?
And the second she joins the club, what happens to her?
She seems fine.
She becomes the woman that she's always hated.
Yeah.
She leaves out porn
she uses the same language.
I think
she's like the same
I have
words
to do something for myself.
Yeah. But like the whole show, I was worried about her. Like, physically, not morally.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, I
thought that was a genius choice. Is you're worried about her well-being, and then she gets to $5 million. You're so happy, but then she also just kind of becomes gross right after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought that was a really good way to
Money corrupts, baby.
Money corrupts. Speaking of, how do we corrupt you? No. What do we do? Like, I keep on hearing conversations about how we're going to tax people who make a lot of money. I've been very fortunate. I've made a lot of money, and they're doing a really good job at it. So, how do we tax the people who really are making a lot of money? Like the guys who like send their wives to space for fun. How do we make sure?
Just so you, I hate this talking point. I don't care. Just so you know, even if you taxed them a fuck ton, most of the money doesn't come from the billionaire class. It's going to come from millionaires broadly and middle class. If you want to make a lot of money, you have to expand your tax base. You cannot lean on these 0.001% of figures and assume that they're somehow going to be able to fund the entire government. It will never happen. Taxes, again, the United States is so unbelievably mind-fucked when it comes to who pays taxes. If you guys went to Europe, like, people are always like, man, if you go to Canada and you're a millionaire, oh, you're going to pay a lot of taxes, boy. If you make $50K a year and you go to Canada, you're going to pay more taxes than you have any fucking idea you'd ever have to pay. Because in the United States, people who make like less than 60K like have almost no tax footprint. It's insane. But whatever. Also, I love how as all these people became wealthier, it went from tax the millionaires to whoa. We're talking about the ultra wealthy, not the wealthy, the ultra wealthy.
What did you think about that?
The spaceflight?
Yeah.
I'm glad they got back okay. I mean, I guess, I mean, it seems to be there's some other things we could probably be paying a little more attention to, but you know, it's exciting. Look, we're in this era of commercial spaceflight, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And I worked on this when I was Secretary of Transportation like that.
Oh, you were part of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's transportation, right? Our main thing was just making sure on the way, it's actually very Wild West right now, big picture wise. The main concerns are making sure you don't hit anything on the way up because you got to go through the national airspace. Right. And that if anything blows up on the ground, you don't hurt anybody on the ground. Like those kind of main like concerns. But eventually we'll have to start regulating that like we do commercial air travel, right? In order to make it, like now I think there's a sense of fly at your own risk, right? Like you understand if you're being blasted into space.
Do you have to like ask permission when you're ready to go? Is there
I'm guessing there's all kinds of, I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing there's all kinds of releases and paperwork.
If only we could talk to the transportation secretary.
But there's an understanding there's a different level of risk, right? Yeah. Whereas on commercial aviation, we have zero tolerance for risk. And actually that's worked out pretty well, right? Like I think one thing that we always talk about the things that are going poorly. We pay attention to the bad thing before we notice the good thing.
It does feel like that a little bit recently that the planes aren't making it as much.
Yeah, well, we can get into that. But we had 15 years with zero commercial airline fatal crashes. 15 years. Think about that. Like just in the time I was secretary, we had about 4 billion people get on airplanes. Like statistically, if you took your seat on an airplane and you were sitting there, buckle your seatbelt, eating your snack, you would be statistically more likely to randomly die of natural causes than to be involved in a fatal crash, right? Wow. And that didn't just randomly happen. That had years of technology, regulation, policy, like a lot of things go into that. And that's what it looks like kind of on the other side of that process, where with commercial space.
I love this messaging because nobody thinks about that. Like, nobody thinks like, boy, today was a good day because there were no commercial airline crashes. And then like when you fly and land, you're just like, oh, well, you know, airplanes just don't crash, right? That's actually not true. Believe it or not. It's actually, wait, is my stream title fucked up? Hold on. Last stream until travel through Sunday. Anything else tonight at 6 ET? Oh, because of the typo? It's actually not normal to be 35,000 feet in the air. It's actually a super abnormal thing. There's a lot of work that goes into going up there, staying up there, and then coming down without coming down too fast.
Spaceflight, it's very new. It's understood that it's very risky, and I guess that's okay. But I don't want to lose the first thing you asked about, which is taxation, because I think, you know, a big thing, I think most Americans, definitely my party, but I think most Americans believe that if you're making $1 billion, good for you. But like you should at least be paying an effective tax rate that's comparable, or I would argue more, than like a firefighter. And that's not true right now. Like right
because
now,
nobody really makes $1 billion.
Right, because it's all equity, and it's like,
you're not getting a paycheck.
Nobody makes income. Like anybody that's generating that type of wealth is not making income. So it's almost like, and this is not like a woo-hoo, like, oh, we got it so tough, but it's almost like the people who are, I think Miles used the term like not middle rich, like middle class, like they're the ones that are actually paying what they should pay. If they're adhering to the tax code, they're not, you know, hiring these tax attorneys that are going to, you know, attack it all willy-nilly.
Also, this narrative needs to change. If they're not hiring these tax attorneys, no, fuck you, okay? Listen, there is a tax code. We should not have a tax code that is reliant on, like, the goodwill of people to pay the most in taxes and not do anything to minimize their tax footprint. If there's something that you don't like about the tax code that people are able to take advantage of, then change it, okay? Change it.
And try to reduce whatever they're paying in. But let's assume, let's take it for face value, right? Somebody, an athlete or somebody that's making $5 million, and let's say that they pay $2.5 million around, right? The concern I have really is potentially the corporations. And I'm not smart enough to even know about this stuff, but it seems to me, and I think tariffs plays into this, so I'd love to get your take on it. But like, it seems to me on the surface, and again, I'm giving a very emotional argument. You can give me tons of data, call me an idiot for even thinking this, but it's possible.
I doubt it.
Okay, seems to me that there's been an effort
that has been supported to, send the manufacturing of some of these products overseas to increase profits, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe it's more effective to manufacture them overseas. Maybe it's not all nefarious, but the idea is to increase shareholder profits or increase the profits of the company, which I'm not necessarily against. What I'm against is when you also put these shell companies overseas to decrease, you create the headquarters and you put it in Dublin or something like that so you can avoid taxes. So,
and it's a P.O. box, nobody's even there.
Exactly. So you can't do both. You can
You got to fight that with globalism, though, by the way.
send the manufacturing overseas.
Yes.
But at least if we're taxing the revenue of that company that's generating billions of dollars.
Yes.
You would like to believe that that money would come back to the American people, and then we could reinvest in the American people, and then maybe there's other industries that would pop up, and those jobs could transfer from manufacturing to those new ones.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
But you can't do. To me, it just feels like if you do both, you are using the marketplace that America is. That
Encourages entrepreneurship, all of that, but not really giving back.
and then
at all.
stealing from it.
Yeah, there's no question, especially.
Bro, just the little bit I've learned recently, I just in terms of currency and just random macro econ stuff, our position in the world was really just so good. The fact that we have a good surplus, massive trade deficit, we're buying all this shit from other countries. What's the fear about buying a lot of stuff from other countries? Well, runaway inflation could be really bad, a severely weakened currency, unable to sustain your government, I guess, right? But none of that actually happened because the USD was so fucking strong. The United States bounced back from inflation better than all the rest of the G7 countries. We have no problem funding our shit, even though we've got to borrow a lot of money to do it because so many other people are holding USD around the world because we buy so much shit from them because the US economy is so huge and our workforce is so productive. Sorry. Anyway.
Because a lot of what that tax revenue goes into or is supposed to go into here in the U.S. is what then turns around and makes it possible for businesses to thrive.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, my favorite example is probably the smartphone. So, have you ever noticed, in talks or whenever somebody mentions a smartphone, they start to pull it out of their pocket or touch it. But so. The federal government could not have invented the iPhone, right? I don't think any of us would want a phone that was invented by the federal government.
That thing would suck.
That is all of the design, the manufacturing supply chains. That's the kind of thing that corporations can do very well, and Apple did it very well. And
oh my God! And Pete is my fucking neoliberal shill. Yes, he's not going to do exactly this. Also, I don't know enough about this guy. I just know everybody hates him, but I don't know. But it's this. This is a good principle to have in mind, okay?
The basic principles underlying the free market, as Adam Smith taught them to his students in this university, are really very simple. Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
The peoples of the world. The peoples of the world, guys. Do you not care about the peoples of the world? There was a guy who, I think just recently, actually, went on Joe Rogan and gave a really great explanation for why tariffs are so fucking horrible. Fuck. Was it supposed to know my subreddit? Fuck. Who has this? Where was it? Somebody link me. Was it not recent? Was it recent?
So
It was Elon Musk. I don't know how old this video was though, but it was funny because Elon explained perfectly how fucking stupid it was. To do everything on your own. Hold on. Oh, this. Why is it, how old is this? Also, why is this subtitled in Chinese? God damn it.
Tariffs. I know that's very controversial. What are your thoughts on tariffs? I know that's very controversial to even people, economists. They disagree. Some agree. Some think it's a good idea. Some think it's a terrible idea. What do you think?
I think you need to be careful with tariffs. I deal a lot with like supply chain issues. You know, like the global automotive supply chain for Tesla, for example, is incredibly complex. So when there are sudden changes in tariffs, then you're like, well, we've got a factory like somewhere else that's making a part that goes into the car. Now suddenly, if that part's suddenly twice as expensive, it like messes everything up. You know, so you want to be have tariffs be predictable, so that companies can adjust their supply chain. I think companies are more than happy to increase manufacturing in America. It's just that you can't do it instantly. So if you put up giant tariffs immediately and don't give companies a chance to build factories in America, because you got to move atoms. Like you've got to build a building, you've got to install equipment, you've got to train people. Like that doesn't happen instantly. So you just got you want to have for tariffs. You want to have a ramp so that companies can adjust and build the factories and train the people and get the equipment in place. Otherwise, you basically just shock the system and it breaks or bad things happen. So I'm against like sudden giant tariffs because it's an impossible response if you've got to move 1,000 tons of equipment. You just in some cases collectively millions of tons of equipment. You just can't do that overnight. It's literally impossible. So I think we want to be thoughtful about tariffs and give companies a ramp. I mean, I do generally agree that America should do more manufacturing. I'm a big manufacturing guy. I love manufacturing. So I've spent a lot of time in the factory.
We've talked openly about the difficulties of manufacturing, how complicated it is, and about most people aren't really aware of something that's as complex as, like, say, building a Tesla.
Yeah.
Manufacturing
is super hard and complicated. So, like a lot of people they've never been in a factory or they don't know how difficult it is to make things. And they, for a lot of people, I think just ketchup comes from the store. Like the store like just has there's like people like for a lot of people who've been in academia or for all these like sort of socialist communist types, like they've never actually made anything. So they operate on the premise that there's this magical horn of plenty that just outputs goods and services. And if someone's got more goods and services than someone else, it's because they took more from this magical horn of plenty. And I'm like, guys, there's no magical horn.
That's Trump,
plenty.
by the way.
There's no cornucopia.
Good one.
Actually, goods and services come from people working collectively, doing a lot of hard work to produce the goods and services that you like. And that you need. But
we've become very accustomed to these things happening overseas.
Yeah, if only academia could have figured out that tariffs were bad.
We'll make a lot of stuff, but we could make more. We probably should make more. I think we should value manufacturing a lot more in the United States than we currently do.
Well, it'd be very nice if we were completely self-sufficient.
No.
Like medicine, there's a bunch of different things that get manufactured overseas. It was a huge problem during COVID.
But listen to this guy.
Because all the shipping was shut down.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to say there's a lot of merit to the economics of comparative advantage. So if you're completely self-sufficient, what that means is that you make all this stuff yourself, and even if some other country is really good at making something, you still make it yourself, which means you're going to have the inferior, more costly product domestically.
Right, like Soviet Russia.
Yeah, like trade improves prosperity. This is important. So you don't actually want to make everything yourself.
Wait, really?
And you can run this, like you can think of this thought experiment on a sort of a micro scale or small scale, and then expand that and say where does the at what point does the thought experiment no longer prove to be valid? Now let's consider the case of you as an individual. Imagine you have to do everything yourself. You have to farm. You had to grow chickens. You got to do your own eggs. You've got to build your own house. You've got to do your own electrical repair, your own plumbing, everything yourself. Everything. Now that would be impossible. Okay, now let's expand it to, okay, there's 10 people. Now you're going to have some specialization of tasks. Okay, well, maybe one person can be really good at, construction, another person can be good at farming. It's like, but still, 10 people is not enough. So like, let's go to 100 people. Now let's go to 100 million people. Now let's go to 1 billion people. And you still get the economics of specialization, like specialization of labor, where people become expert at particular things, still matters at 1 billion people, or at 8 billion people, which is Earth. So you still want, you do want specialization of labor. You do want countries to be really good at a particular thing and make that thing.
Also, it encourages innovation if you have competition. If the Germans are making better cars, we have to make better cars.
Right.
I like how Joe Rogan's entire thought process just completely switched when Elon Musk gave a very basic understanding. He's like, and now all of a sudden Joe was like, yeah, and of course, yeah, this is what
people with them, which is like one of the things that happened during the 80s and 90s, and America was making crap cars, and Germany was making much better ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the Japanese car. Basically, the American car industry got really lazy in the 70s and 80s, and then the Japanese and German car companies came in and just cleaned the clock,
cleaned cocks.
There was an old joke from that is kind of telling. It's a very old joke where it's like, why did the Japanese car companies beat the American car companies? In the Japanese car company, you had 8 people rowing and 1 person steering. And in the American car company, you had 8 people steering and 1 person rowing. If this was a boat. So imagine a boat race.
Yeah.
Boat race, Japanese boat, you got 8 people rowing, 1 person steering. In the American boat, you got 1 person rowing and 8 people steering.
Limeo.
When the American car company loses the race, they fire the rower. And it's like, okay, that was actually kind of true.
Yeah,
everyone wants to be the boss, and then everyone wants to do the work.
That was fucking epic, Elon. Okay, sorry. These fucking people.
Competitors. But what makes the iPhone work? Well, among other things, the internet. The internet was literally invented by a federal research project. And it would never have been possible to invent the internet with a private company because you wouldn't have got the kind of capital return, even though it's $1 trillion idea or a multi-trillion dollar idea. Companies can do multi-billion dollar ideas, but $1 trillion idea, like inventing the internet, that requires basic research. And that's the kind of thing the government's supposed to do, among many other things.
It requires basic research? What does that mean?
Yeah, by basic research, I mean things that are so fundamental that you actually don't know for 50 or 100 years if they're going to have a return. They might never work out.
Oh, right? Yeah. You can't look at it as this thing is going to be profitable. It has to be
so it's different
benevolent endeavor for society.
Yeah, it's different from research on like a pharmaceutical company researches a new medication, expecting that they're going to
there's going to be a return in the next 10, 20 years.
Right, at least kind of within the kind of profit horizon.
But public parks is another version of this and stuff like that. You can't privatize the public park.
Right. This is the whole idea of public goods. Right? This is why we have governments, why we collect taxes.
God, we're turning into such libs already, dude.
But there's a handshake, right? There are the things that only the government can do, and then there are the things that the private sector can and should do, and they meet in the middle. But if you start shorting, and part of what really worries me right now about this kind of war on academia, and there are some things about academia that need to change, but the war on academia, the cuts to cancer research, the cuts to science research, this kind of like general anti-science atmosphere that I think is emanating from the administration, that costs us in ways that don't show up on a corporate profit and loss statement 6 months from now or a year from now. But in terms of whether a country, a society, an economy is productive and is growing and is innovating, that starts to really cost you over time. And if we're shorting that, or if corporations and extremely wealthy people don't want to be paying into that through taxes, that is, I think, a classic example of a kind of short-term gain that causes long-term pain.
Yes.
And I'm really worried about that.
And I think that's why there seems to be a lot of support for the administration right now, or one reason why, and even support for the administration when it comes to tariffs. When the tariffs happen and you hear about the stock market being deeply affected, most Americans are not invested in the stock market.
Oh
so
my God.
Rich people are losing.
You're young, bro. The stock market is not like how much is in my Robinhood account. You're thinking about people's 401ks and IRAs at this point. This is or I guess pensions if they're trading on stuff. These are the things that you're thinking about. Yeah, young people are not as bought into the stock market. But that's not because it's poor versus wealthy. It's because young people just don't have anything in an investment account. Usually you have student loans. You're at the beginning of your earnings for your life.
Losing some money.
Schultz is in his 40s. I understand that he's in his 40s, but what he's trying to do is this happens so much. Hassan does it. All of you, and you guys in my chat do it. All you guys do it. People like to LARP as poor people, especially when they've been wealthy all of their life. So they'll say things that they've seen on TV shows or movies about what it means to be poor. This is why you'll hear people say things like, oh yeah, being poor in America is really hard. I remember when we would have to skip dinner every other night because we couldn't afford food, and we had to Like it's just like the most ridiculous. Like, hold on, I'm sorry. Were you poor in? Did you say you were poor in the United States of America, or were you poor in Uganda? What are you talking about? Like, this is not the issue of poverty in the United States, and the issues that poor people face isn't over like basic sustenance, right? It has to do with other stuff. It has to do with access to other parts of society, or like things like, can you go to a decent school without having to work to also help support your family, or do you have access to like reliable transportation that doesn't break down all the fucking time, or how safe do you feel in your particular neighborhood because of like a bunch of other, it's more complicated than that. Not to say that being poor is a great experience, but it's not like poverty in America is hard because we're starving to death. Like, yeah, but this is one of those things like, oh yeah, it's hard for poor people because poor people don't have any stocks whatsoever. It's like bullshit. A lot of companies have stock buying programs. I had a 401k at my fucking casino job. Plenty of people that work real jobs like have this stuff. It's there.
Most Americans are not invested in the stock market. So they're like, I don't give a fuck. Oh, rich people are losing some money? Or 50%. We can go off the numbers. Meaning there's a large swath of Americans that don't feel directly
Right, but here's the thing, right?
impacted.
A tariff, so part of what's happening is the markets are responding to their belief that the tariffs will probably make the world economy less productive and make a recession more likely. But a tariff is a tax that people pay on stuff they buy every day. And proportionally, if you're, what'd you call it, middle rich, versus like people in the neighborhood I grew up in.
Dude, if you're making... It might just be because of my lifestyle, okay, I guess. But in my opinion, once you're making seven figures, unless you want to buy like a fucking super yacht or a plane, like you're rich. You're rich. Well, like what does middle rich mean? I feel like you have to invent new expressions of wealth to feel like you're part of the poor club. Like, what does that even mean? What is, if this guy is considering himself middle rich, what do people spend their money on? I'm so curious. Once you're making seven figures, how do you even spend it all? Like when I was making 100K, you can blow through 100K in a year very easily. But making $1 million a year, like I can go to a car dealership and I can buy a new car every month and probably not notice it that much. Am I banking? Like, I don't even know what to do with my money other than get sued for it. Just kidding. Like, what do you, when you're making seven figures, at what point, I guess maybe if you buy a huge fucking house, if you get like a $20 million house and you've got like a $80,000 a month house payment or something like that, maybe there you're starting to approach things. Like, I don't understand. Yeah, I guess it must be actually, I'm retarded. That's it. It's massive houses and it's cars. Those are all the and like big expensive cars. That's what people are spending money on. My bad. I just sit at home and I play video games all day. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do politics. Actually, now I play video games because, Factorio.
In South Bend, Indiana.
Sure.
Like, proportionally, it's the people in Indiana who are spending a much bigger portion of their income at, let's say, Walmart. And everything at Walmart is about to get more expensive.
You're 100% right. I'm talking about the knee-jerk emotional reaction when you see, like, people who have money and have seemingly left you behind as they've gotten richer start to suffer a little bit. You go, yeah, I don't really care if you're suffering. In the same way that, like, when the Palisades fires happened, there was this sentiment of, like, oh, a rich person's third home is on fire. Right. They'll figure it out. Not this person's entire like life and belongings just went up in smoke. So I think there is this like sentiment amongst a lot of Americans. You probably experienced it where you're from. Just this kind of being like left behind.
Margin call scene about how millions go quickly.
It looks like they're gonna make us done by.
$50,000 on clothes a year? 75,000 on restaurants, he said? Damn, I need to get better hot chocolate.
Is a perfect example that really justifies that sentiment. It's like, why are you using the American marketplace and the support that we've given you and the lack of regulation? There's a reason why these companies don't sprout up in other countries, right? They sprout up here. And it's not just because they happen to be these unique, smart individuals. It's because there is this marketplace that allows them to thrive here. You don't get to remove the headquarters so that you can not pay your fair share of taxes that's going to then support the next generation of people who do the same thing. But how do you tax them? What do you do?
But look at what's about to happen, right? Like, as we speak, congressional Republicans are working on a budget framework that's going to cut corporate taxes. Like, that's one of the biggest things it's going to do. And even this president, you know, the least popular he ever was last time around was when they passed his tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy. So a lot of this is about, look,
can I ask a question about that real quick? Yeah. Is there a world where, and I doubt that this is possible, but is there a world where if they do that, it will influence companies that have gone abroad with their headquarters to come back here?
I think it's
I'm not just trying to defend the
No,
Can we just have an intelligent conversation about what taxes should look like, right? Is there a tax rate that's too high? Abso-fucking-lutely there is, okay? it shouldn't be 100%. But is there a tax rate that's too low? You have to concede that there must be, right? Just have an honest conversation about what the tax policy should be.
I get that argument. But honestly, there are ways to structure taxes so that they capture where the value and the wealth is actually created. Like you can have a PO box in the Bahamas or Ireland or whatever. But so one of the things, for example, that happened in the last administration was an international agreement on like a threshold, a minimum, so that and now it only works if everybody agrees on it. This is part of why diplomacy matters so much, right? But no other country really wants to see too much of that happening either. So there's a way to create a floor that gets you a more level playing field.
An international agreement for taxation of corporations.
Yeah, so
even if your account is in Switzerland, if you have $1 trillion in Switzerland or the Cayman or whatever, you're a trillionaire. You're going to get taxed as such.
Exactly. So it reduces the incentive to offshore your books.
Now, it kind of seems like you're making the argument for a tariff on Lesotho.
Ooh, I had a friend message me this the other day, actually, that I was, and I didn't really know. It's hard to know because as I've grown on the internet, obviously I get more attention, positive and negative. But somebody messaged me and they asked, they were basically curious, like, do you feel like hater communities online have changed over the past 5 or 10 years? It feels like it's gotten so much more insane. And my intuitive feeling is yes, it absolutely has gotten more insane. But it could also just be that maybe, as I'm more popular, if I have more people, I pick up more haters, maybe that's it. Ludwig apparently posted this. Will you post on Mogul Mail again? He said, no, I don't think so. I think the drama landscape has changed quite a bit on YouTube in a way that I don't like. I don't like it so much because there is sometimes fun drama, but I do think drama frogs have become more powerful, scarier to be honest. They drive fear into my heart. So, I'm doing quite well. We're chilling. It's a bit of money to lose, but that's okay. I don't need that money. I do feel like the weird anti-fanning landscape has gotten quite a bit more crazy, weird, malicious on the internet, but I don't know.
Right?
Why? I don't know why they're beating up on Lesotho.
No, I think the justification for that was so that someone can't go put a manufacturing factory
fine.
on the plate.
Tariffs have their place, right? I mean,
we don't think about tariffs yet, but just on the taxation.
But again, what really worries me about tariffs is those don't amount to a tax on corporations.
They
those
amount to a tax on consumers. Without
I push back. Sorry, I'm going to push back. And this is something Andrew brought up on a call that I completely agree with. And I'm an idiot. But I feel when people say these things, oh, the buck gets passed on to the consumer. That only happens because the corporations have exploited profits to the highest possible degree to keep their share price as high as possible. Things have gotten more expensive over the past 50 years every year. It's not just inflation. I think corporate greed is a big part of that.
We have an aggregate lifestyle creep as well, okay? One thing that people say, it's funny because I heard this quote, I think I was listening to this, we were listening to this on stream, and some guy was like, I thought 50 years ago when we started getting robots and all this shit that all of a sudden, we'd be working even less and America would be enjoying a better quality of life and all the robots would be doing the work, but that's not happening at all. Like, Americans are working more than ever. What's going on? The reason is because as we become more productive and as we generate more wealth, our lifestyles get better too. And we're not comfortable just chilling with a decade's old worth of technology. So people will look at how much more we're producing and how much more wealth exists in the country. And they'll be like, wow, well, why are we still working so much? You don't have to. Like, if you want, there's a world where you can have a $150 cell phone and an ordinary ass TV and a small apartment with even a 10, 15-year-old used car now is still works. You can do that. But people want the newest shit. They want the 3DS XGX, 1000 and the newest graphics cards and they want to play the newest video games. They don't want to play games that are 10 years old or 20 years old. Or they don't want to watch, old shit or have to buy a DVD or whatever. So it's not just that, why is everything still going up in costs? Because people also have more money. They want to buy more shit too. And people want the newest shit. They want the best shit. They want the latest shit.
Possible. Things have gotten more expensive over the past 50 years every year. It's not just inflation. I think corporate greed is a big part of that. So why is it that now that there's a tariff, their profit has to stay the exact same and nobody's looking at them as perpetrators of any kind of greed? And it's just, the United States government is deciding here's a measure to help middle America, and now we have to eat that.
But how is making middle America pay more a measure to help middle America, right? I mean,
well, I would, and I do think I get more frustrated with Democrats because I want very badly to be that. I definitely do not identify as.
This is bullshit, and I hate this. Nobody actually thinks this way or does this way, where they're like, oh no, the reason why I relentlessly and endlessly shit on this side and never support them ever is just because I want them to do better. bullshit. Like, there is a world where that is the case, but that looks like a Mehdi Hassan or a Sam Cedar, where at the end of the day, you know, when they do spend a lot of time showing the Democrats, you ask them, oh, well, which party do you think is better? Like, the Democrats, of course. Easy. That's not even close. But when you get these guys, they're like, well, I don't even know. I think both parties are the same. Like, I don't know. Donald Trump's pretty base, LOL. It's like, why do you criticize only the left again? Because I want them to be better, because I want to be the left. Bullshit. You just want to be a conservative.
Conservative, but I find there's this. When I go to Middle America, and I'm sure you go there. We travel the country. Yeah, you live there. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. But it's like, oh, there's like decay in some of these places, and it doesn't feel like the party that I want to identify with has any empathy for them. And this, to me, was an idea that could help bring jobs back there. And I don't think the execution has been great from what I'm seeing, but this could help them. Why don't we look at any measure that could help them beyond, let's keep things the way they are, because the way status quo is not helping.
Yes, I agree on that. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think what my party has to do is respond to this in a way that doesn't make it sound like our whole argument is, let's just go back to 2024, right? Like, if things like this, moments like this, movements like the one that's in charge of the White House.
I'm okay going back to 2024 right now, but okay.
Right now, don't spring up in a country or an economy where everything's going along fine. And look, I lived this too. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. People think South Bend, they know Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
The big employer that propelled South Bend wasn't Notre Dame, it was Studebaker. Studebaker made cars. It was before the big three, it was the big four. And we were one of them. It dominated our city, grew our city. And then in 1963, they shut down. That's 20 years before I was born, and we were still dealing with it 20 years later. We were still dealing with it 50 years later when I became the mayor there at the age of 29. And what had happened was, when we were going to school, I would go in between just acres of collapsing factories. It literally looked like a war zone. I have been to war zones that looked very similar to the way a lot of places in the industrial Midwest, like where I grew up, looked because of some of these things you're talking about. Right. Which is why I think there's an appeal to saying we're going to bring back manufacturing, right? And by the way, again, I don't want to move away from what I was saying that we shouldn't go back to where we were, because I think a lot needs to change. But I would point out that in our entire lifetime, the year when there was the most investment in factories in the United States, the most factories being built, was last year. Because there were a lot of policies, the chip stuff, the manufacturing stuff, trying to get more of the green economy stuff to be built on U.S. soil, that led to a lot of these factories. Now, a lot of them are still in construction as we speak. Some of them actually open, some of them still haven't. But right now, in Kokomo, Indiana, I just read a story today about 370 workers at Stellantis who just got laid off. Auto workers who got laid off because of the tariffs. So this is a tool that you can use for sure. But it's absolutely critically important that you know what you're doing when you do. And if you're just making shit up as you go along, or if you're doing it for a reason that's actually less about helping Middle America and more about consolidating power, which is what I think is actually happening. We can get into that.
Yeah.
Then it's not going to work. But I don't want to completely disagree with what you're saying earlier. Part of what's happening is, part of why things cost more is that they actually cost more. But also, we've seen a lot of expansion of the corporate profits that people cash in, right, which help to explain why a lot of things cost more.
No,
but to me, the answer to that is, okay, let's have a fairer tax system. How do we do that? Says
we should do that. Though.
At risk of sounding simplistic, you pass a law, we can do this, right? It's not like
what law? For example, it's not going to be income tax, right? Because they'll find a way to not have income.
So you can adjust.
What do you mean? You absolutely can have income tax things, or you can tax capital gains at higher rates, or you can force people to step up their basis and their investments. There are things that you can do. There's absolutely ways to do this. You just have to have the political will to do it.
Capital gains, right? It doesn't have to be all the way at the level that it used to be.
But even with capital gains, you're only taxing them when they cash out, and a lot of these guys won't cash out. They just take loans against their investments, and then loans aren't taxable.
So then make them step up the loans and basis. You can only borrow against what you have a tax basis in. Boom, easy.
So they live for free.
Right. So that's where the idea of wealth taxes come in, right?
No,
and what is that?
Oh God, no, Pete, somebody please black pill him on wealth taxes. Stop with this cringe shit, please. There's so many better ways to tax people.
At a certain point, especially if you're past a certain point and how much you're sitting on, you got to contribute a little bit. This is not a novel. Property taxes are that way, right? You don't wait.
No, property taxes are not the same thing as wealth taxes. No.
But usually, you don't wait until you sell a home to have to pay property tax on every year. You contribute a little bit.
No, you do pay a capital gains tax when you sell a home. You do wait to pay. You don't pay on the capital accrual of a home until you actually sell it. Sorry.
Of the value of the real estate you're sitting on. Right. And that goes to the county roads and the school and the sheriff's department, whatever else you count on, right? So there is a way to do that nationally.
But property tax is going to close that gap? I don't think it's going to close that gap.
If you had all of these, you have pieces of that.
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I think that there is this feeling, this sentiment, I think that Akash was tapping into as well. And there's two things. Like, you seem like someone who's very knowledgeable, very aware of all these things. You know these people that were fired in this random factory in, what'd you say was Iowa?
Kokomo, Indiana.
In Indiana, right? It's like, the average person might not know about that. They don't know about these factories being built. But you have to meet the average person where they feel emotionally. Yeah. And like, I think you do a really good job, and I've seen a lot of your interviews, is like, acknowledging the emotions of the people that you're talking to before giving them evidence that might be contrary to them. Yeah. Instead of this like finger wagging approach, which is like, oh, you're stupid if you don't agree with me. Yeah.
True.
Really important. But just
wait, don't do that.
I think the average like American isn't even aware that like what Amazon makes a year and what they pay in taxes. Like, I think they paid $0 last year.
Yeah, a whole bunch of these corporations.
And I get what they're doing. And it's like they're writing off losses from other parts of the business, or they're reinvesting that money in.
We need to get rid of. We need basic finance. We need basic civics. We need, bro. Can we not do this? God, it's so stupid.
Is this my stereo?
Oh, hey, you got it.
Hey, what happened to my stereo? It's all smashed up.
That's right. Now, it looks like it was broken during shipping, and I insured it for $400.
But you were supposed to get me a refund.
You can't get a refund. Your warranty expired 2 years ago.
So we're gonna make the post office pay for my new stereo now?
It's a write-off for them.
How is it a write-off?
They just write it off.
Write it off what?
Jerry, all these big companies, they write off everything.
You don't even know what a write-off is.
Do you?
No, I don't.
But they do. And they're the ones writing it off.
Wish I had the last 20 seconds of my life back.
Like the magical write-off. Stop. Please stop.
Growing the business. Yeah. And I don't want the pendulum to swing so far that you can't start a business and you can't grow and thrive. And I think that's like one of the great things about it.
Like, this is such an easy thing. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What was your problem? Amazon paid $0 in corporate income taxes. Okay, why? I don't know. You tell me. Well, for a long time, they weren't showing any profits. They were reinvesting their money. So, well, if you're going to make any positive argument for corporate income tax, isn't that one of the positive arguments, that it forces people to reinvest their money? Well, why does that matter? Well, because they don't have any profits. So tax their revenue. Oh, okay, you want to tax their revenue. So let's say that I spend $900,000 on products, and then let's say that I sell $1 million worth of products, and I make $100,000 worth of profit. You want to tax me on my revenue, on the money that I made selling products? So let's say that I have a year where I spend more than I even make. Let's say it's a rough year and I spend $600,000. I only make $400,000. You're going to tax me on $600,000? Yes. Okay, well, I'm $200,000 in the hole. Now I have to pay the IRS money on money that I don't even make. I don't even have this money. How does that work in practice? Walk me through this. It's so
America. Yeah. But there has to be this middle ground. And if we don't do something about it, the American people should at least be aware of the, I don't want to say the CEOs, but the people that own these companies that are essentially stealing from the American people and using the system. Like, we should be aware of who they are. Now, I'm not saying we should do anything to them, but they should be shamed.
Or taxed.
If they're not going to pay the taxes, you're going to pay it emotionally. Because that, like,
I don't really care about their money.
I'm financially dumb. How can Amazon be showing no profits, yet Bezos was the richest man in the world? Did Bezos pay taxes? Let's say that I own a company. Let's say that that company is worth $10,000. Let's say that every year my company sells $1,000 worth of products, and then I make it, so I make $1,000, but I spend $800 on products, so I've got $200 in profit. But let's say that every year I'm reinvesting all of that profit. So I take the $200 in profit, I don't even cash it out for myself, and I reinvest that $200 of profit in the company. The next year, let's say the company 10x its value. Now it's a $100,000 company, right? Well, what happened? I don't make any profit, so there's nothing for me to even pay taxes against, but the overall value of the company, the valuation of the company increases to $100,000, and I own that company, so my overall net worth increases to $100,000. So the appreciation of my wealth came from the growth of the valuation of the company, what the value of the company is worth. But there weren't any profits to pay taxes against, right? I haven't sold my business, so it's not like I'm seeing that money. It's just a way to approximate my net worth. That's how Amazon can make a lot of money, but Bezos, or that's how Amazon could have no profits, but the wealth of an owner of Amazon could theoretically grow because the total valuation of the company would grow, and they own the company, if that makes sense.
Promotions. I just want to tax them.
I do think there's a sociopathy to these people that you might underestimate.
Yes, true, but like maybe they're partners. Like there will be no more chick flights to space. I promise you. After the reaction to this, there'll be no more chick flights to space. I promise you. It will not happen again. And the next one that happens, it will have like a real purpose.
That's a fight when they get home. When she gets home, he's gonna be like, "You see how much shit I had to deal with? Stupid fucking."
To have a girls trip to the moon.
Also, guys, tour dates: May 9th and 10th, Virginia Beach; June 19th and through 21st, I'm gonna be in Salt Lake City at Wise Guys.
I hope all these tours, if I get tickets, are like free, right? Because they wouldn't do evil.
All those dates and plenty more at akashsing.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Hold on a second. Don't skip forward, guys, because it's the world's fastest ad read. My name's Mark. I'm coming to America, all right? We're going to Bangor, Maine, Portland, Maine, Charleston, Atlanta, Strasburg, Hoboken, Indianapolis.
Several cities to suck his dick.
Let's get a Folk Miles town change. See you guys there.
The current administration's tariff plan.
No one's going to suck my dick.
Somebody suck his dick.
I could be assuming wrong, but it seems like you're against the current administration's tariff plan. And what would you do different? Because no one's giving actual solutions.
Yeah, so I think what you do is you peg it, basically you do what they're pretending to do. So what they said they were doing is they're kind of scanning all of the different countries and they're saying, okay, here's some countries that are really not trading with us on fair terms. Like they're restricting our trade with them, or they're artificially manipulating their currency. China does this for sure.
What does that mean? Right? So artificially
manipulating. The year they were referring to, 2018, was the year in which Amazon made positive net income. Then there was probably some accelerated depreciation, or there's probably some other way they were offsetting the income. This is how corporate taxes work. This is good. You want this. This is good. If a company is not paying income, if a company's not paying corporate income tax because it can't show profits, then what's likely happening is they're either not making a profit or they're reinvesting the money, which is part of what a corporate income tax is supposed to do. The corporate income tax makes it more profitable to reinvest in your company than to just withdraw it as a dividend or to pay it out as a dividend or a disbursement or whatever the fuck else you would do to return money to shareholders.
Manipulate your currency.
So in a nutshell, the cheaper the exchange rate, the more you're going to export because the cheaper your goods are, right? So the strong dollar, right? Basically, the weaker the dollar is actually, the cheaper our stuff looks to the rest of the world, and the more they're going to purchase our things. So if you're China, one thing you're going to do is it sounds counterintuitive. Like usually you think like a nationalistic country, we want our currency to be super strong. You
make your currency cheap, so you have a competitive advantage.
Yes.
Now, how does that
like think about if you ever traveled in like Southeast Asia and the dollar's doing really strong, you're like, wow, I'm going to buy like everything here in Thailand.
It's the first thing, right? Like when you go to Europe and you find out the euro's like, there are moments where it's like under the dollar, and you're like, oh my god, let's go. I'm getting this hotel.
Dude, if I go to India, I want a 5-star hotel. It's $200, $300 a night.
Right. So that applies on everything from your experience as a tourist to like major industrial production, right?
And how does one do that?
You could easily add some kind of wealth tax for billionaires or something. First of all, you're not even going to raise that much money. So this is such a wasted fucking jerk-off, like wealthy, white, middle-class kid who doesn't give a fuck about anybody in the country or give a fuck about anything in the tax system. You're not even going to raise that much money doing this. Number one. Number two, assessing a wealth tax is incredibly complicated, okay? It's real. How do you value? There's basic stuff, maybe, like businesses that you can value. But even at that, it's going to cost so many weird distortionary things if you start forcing people to sell off chunks of their business because they have to pay a tax bill on a value that they haven't even recognized, haven't even realized. It's not even a realized gain. They haven't sold anything. And then this is for publicly traded companies. What about for private companies? You're going to go to a guy who might be worth $100 million or $500 million, depending upon what the next investor values his company at. Like, it's a clusterfuck of complicated shit. And there are so many easy ways on the table to raise tons of money in taxes. Why would you implement the most absurdly complicated, dipshit, bullshit-ass tax, okay, that 8 out of the 12 European nations that had these wealth taxes ditched them because they were so dog shit? Why wouldn't you just make your capital gains rates higher? Make your upper tax bracket marginal rates higher? Fund more on the IRS to go after the $400 to $600 billion of tax revenue that's out there that they can't even get right now. There are so many better ways to raise money than this fucking jerk-off wanker, wealth tax fucking idea that would be complicated, confusing, and wouldn't even raise that much fucking money. Oh my God, it's so cringe. This is the one propaganda nonsense Destiny fell into that makes no sense. I just explained like 15 different ways why this is such a retarded fucking idea, and you can't hear it. Your brain is broken. Your brain is broken, okay? The guy over there might be choking on Trump's dick. You're getting fucked by Bernie Sanders' fucking well-taxed cock, okay? It's such a stupid fucking tax. It's such a stupid fucking tax.
Do they print more money?
Value-added tax would be way fucking better. You could raise so much more money and impact so much more of the economy, and it would give the federal government an actual fucking sales tab. That would be so much better. The bumping up of the capital gains, your marginal income taxes. You can force people to realize a basis in things they're taking loans against. You can cut the inheritance tax deduction a little bit if you want, or remove the step up in basis if you want on death. Like, there's so many different things you could do that would raise money. They would actually raise money for the government. I didn't actually do a wealth tax on it. Fucking billionaire. You're not even raising any money. But you don't care about raising money because it's a virtue signal. That's all it is. It's a virtue signal. Because you think that taxes are a tool to attack the evil people you don't like, and that's it.
You can print more money, you can buy and sell bonds, you can, some countries just officially set an exchange rate and then use their central bank to do, there's all kinds of ways to do it. But the point is, part of trading deals is you're supposed to promise not to do it. And so what I'm saying is, what you do is you look for a place where there's an unfair trading practice, and then you respond. And you say, okay, you either drop this trading practice, or we're going to impose these restrictions on how you trade with us, which again is exactly what they say they're doing.
To be fair to the chatters, all Tiny really said was it would be confusing and hard. These things mean things in policy world, okay? You uneducated, glowing whiter than the surface of the sun, okay? Trust fund baby fucking loser, all right? So when I say it would be hard, okay? Sorry, I have to speak longer, okay? Because I still have a lot of Bernie fucking dropouts in my audience. When I say a tax be hard taxes are bad because it hurts compliance, because taxpayers don't know how to assess it properly. So it hurts compliance, so not everybody complies with it, which decreases the revenue. And it's harder to enforce, meaning you have to pay more for the IRS, and the more money that you're putting into there isn't necessarily getting you a bunch of money out, because it's not like they have easy cases. These are difficult cases, okay? When I say things like confusing, it's kind of the same as hard. Confusing, what I mean is it's difficult to assess the wealth of an individual when a lot of the assets that they own are things that are of low liquidity, meaning they're not traded frequently, okay? For instance, let's say that, hypothetically made $3 million last year, okay? I am the sole owner of Destiny.gg LLC. That is true. What the fuck do you assess my business at? Are you going to wealth tax me because I have 100% ownership in my business? Because I do. Well, what are you gonna, you could 7x profits or 7x revenues, or you could try to apply some other formula. Let's say that you decide that my business is worth $10 million. And, you know, it might be, but is it? I can never sell my business for $10 million. There might be formulas that you could plug in to figure out what my business is worth. Like, but so are you going to assess a wealth tax against me because of what? That, like, I don't even, I'm obviously the IRS would have come at me for it. I would be arguing all day, like, well, hold on, this is not an accurate valuation of my company. And then what's more, what if I get Dan, hey, Dan, the IRS is about to butt fuck me on my wealth taxes this year. I'm going to go ahead and sell you a 10% stake in my company for $100,000. Oh, well, okay. I sell 10% to him for $100K. My business is worth $1 million. I literally have an investor that bought a 10% stake in it for $100,000. That's $1 million valuation. End of story. Okay. What, the IRS is going to fight me on that? Are you going to go and vet every single investor to make sure that the shares that I'm selling are legitimately it's not a publicly traded company. You have no way of knowing this, right? This is the easiest problem to solve, by the way. That doesn't even get into less tangible and less liquid and more on like real world assets. Like, what about a house? What if you own a house in an area where there's not frequently houses bought or sold? How do you do the valuation of the house? Do you go by the county assessor? What the taxes are assessed at? Because taxes aren't assessed at your house at the value that you could actually buy or sell it for. Usually they're taxed quite a bit lower. So are you going to have federal assessors come in to try to assess the value of your house to apply a wealth tax towards it? What about for companies that are more fundamental value companies versus some that are more speculatively valued? For instance, if I go to Bezos, let's say Amazon is worth $500 billion, and I say, I want to assess a 1% wealth tax towards Bezos, and he has to dump 1% of his shares or whatever to pay it. Okay, fine, who cares? It probably doesn't affect it, because Amazon is a real company that does real things. It provides real services. You've got AWS, you've got transportation, you've got warehouses, you've got assets on the books. Fundamental analysis of that company shows it's a real company. What if I go to Elon Musk and I say, you need to pay 1% and your for a wealth tax for Tesla? Tesla is way more speculatively based. Your price per share, earnings, EPS, whatever bullshit is much higher. That ratio is way higher. It earns, or the value of a share is way higher compared to revenue. Well, let's say that Elon has to sell 1% of his stocks. The market, Tesla in particular here, is going to be way more volatile as a result of people having to offload shares on a company that is speculatively based. Is it even fair to say that the value of Tesla is comparable to the value of Amazon or some other company that have the exact same valuation when it comes to assessing a wealth tax? When the reality is Elon Musk, let's say he has $300 billion of Tesla right now, he could probably sell that for $10 billion, because if he were to start offloading all of his shares, the stock in that company is going to fucking tank. If Bezos were to start offloading all of his shares, it would affect the stock price, but nowhere near as much as Tesla. What about when it comes to things like art pieces or instruments or things that you buy that are collectibles or whatever? How do you assess a wealth tax against that? Okay. There are a billion different reasons why wealth taxes are so hard to implement. There's a reason why not that many people have them. There's a reason why of all the people that do have them, most of them dumped them. They're just bad taxes. They're shitty taxes, okay? Buck off. Okay. Jesus.
but it is not what they're doing. And you can tell they came up with this weird formula. It's actually the same thing that ChatGPT would suggest if you just asked ChatGPT, like, hey, like make up a table of how I should trade shares. They used a totally different measure called the trade deficit, which we could get into, and said, okay, if whatever the trade deficit is, we're going to do this formula off of that. And by the way, there was a math mistake that a conservative think tank discovered in the way they did it. And they just randomly applied. There were islands that don't even have people. There are islands that are actually like US, UK.
I heard that this is a little bit of a misnomer, though. I heard that there was a language, there's a little confusion with language, where they said reciprocal, but it was supposed to be proportional.
Either way, it showed the sloppiness.
Then how do you address the fact that taxes have been too low for many years? Do we just have to eat the loss in the form of government deficit and move on? No, you stop advocating for brain dead things like wealth taxes, and you man the fuck up and you say, hey, let's just increase the marginal rates. That's it. Look at how, watch this, okay? Look at how federal tax schedule rates, brackets, watch this, okay? Here's what we do. Here's what you do, okay? You would say, okay, 37%. Let's make that 40%, okay? 35%. Let's make that 38%, okay? 32%. We'll make it 34.5, okay? And maybe we can leave these bottom four alone. Boom! Just with that, okay? Huge revenue increase for the government. Look how easy that was. There's no loophole. There's no complicated way to escape that. No tax accountant is going to save you from that. Okay, easy. Go to your capital gains brackets and just bump both of them up higher. That's it. Easy. Okay? Boom. Right there. That's a fuck ton of extra money. Okay? More money than you would raise with any bullshit ass wealth tax. Okay? It is way easier, but people just...
There's a little confusion with language, where they said reciprocal, but it was supposed to be proportional.
Either way, it showed the sloppiness of the process.
Sure, in terms of the communication, but if the actual process, and I don't want to seem like I'm defending the administration, but I do want to seem like it's important that we get true information out there.
Yep.
So it's like if they're doing proportional tariffs to that trade deficit, that would make sense. If it's reciprocal.
Isn't the problem, though, that you're taxing the middle class by doing that? Fuck them! Make the middle class pay taxes! The middle class needs to be taxed more in the United States. Yes, they do. In the United States, it is insane how lopsided the tax burden is in this country. Make the wealthiest people pay more and expand your tax base to middle classes as well, okay? This insane thing where American fucking lefties or liberal or whatever, lefties or progressives, like, I want to have a European-style Scandinavian tax, blah, blah, blah. Did you know that in those countries that the people that make 30, 40, 50,000 euros a year all pay like 30, 40% income tax? It's not like the United States where when you make 40,000 a year, you pay like 2% or negative 2% on average after your child tax credit and your EITC. Okay. Yeah. You have to expand the tax base. That's how you make more money, but it shouldn't be that much of a problem because there should be things like a public option for health insurance. So you shouldn't have to pay fucking $3,000 out of pocket if you need an x-ray because you accidentally get a fucking dick cut in half for what I don't even know where to go with that. Okay. Expand your tax base, bump your brackets up. Middle class people should pay taxes. Fuck you, pay your fair share. Middle class motherfuckers can pay their fair share too, okay? And then offer more services from the government. Make education more available, cheaper. It already is. There's a lot of subsidized shit there, but nobody talks about that. Who cares? Get your public option.
It doesn't make sense because there's no way you can match a trade deficit from a country that is.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I think it also doesn't make sense as policy. Like a trade deficit may or may not be helpful to us economically. Actually, it's not just a simple thing of like trade deficit bad. So what I'm saying is, you use the tariffs in a much more targeted and specific way when you know that you either have that kind of unfair trade situation, or you're trying to protect a certain industry that you think is vulnerable domestically, right? But it's really important to know what you're doing, or else a whole bunch of people get screwed in the process. Like the other day, I was having breakfast in Michigan out, and a couple of people came up to me. They run like a little shop that was right next to the breakfast place where I was eating. And the woman who runs it said, I'm not sure what we're going to do. It's like clothes and like bags and stuff. And they store stuff from all over the world. And she said, we just put an order in. We don't even know how much it's going to cost us. And I don't know what I'm going to do for next month. I got some inventory here I can use this month, but we're going to be screwed, especially if we don't even know how to plan. Because the other thing you need to do, it's like any form of diplomacy. Like you do shots across the bow. You make clear what if you do this, we're going to respond that way. And there has to be some like logic to it or order to it if you want to shape the behavior of other countries, right? And what we're seeing instead is this like really like chaotic, like grab ass policy where like he changes his mind every couple of days on things, right? And that makes it that much harder, especially if you're a small business or if you're a giant corporation. You have all kinds of hedges and like ways you can maneuver through this.
Or they'll just remove the tariffs.
I know. Oh, dude, you guys should watch that. What's his name? Software Jesus. That guy. It's a really good video on how the large corporations, they might be able to navigate this a bit better than small companies, but large corporations are fucked as well. Everybody's fucked on this. Nobody is, and this is another reason why that wealth analysis of everything, like, oh, this is just Trump making his rich friends richer. No, there's something far more devious at play here, because nobody is profiting or benefiting. It may be the dollar store right now. Like, nobody is making out well in this current tax regime or tariff regime or whatever the fuck we are in right now. It's a disaster for literally fucking everybody. It's insane. This is incredibly ideologically motivated.
That was another thing that really frustrated me. If you're going to put the tariffs on, put them on everything.
Seems to me like, hold it.
Yeah,
you know, they're like picking and choosing what they're going to.
Yeah, so now Apple doesn't have the tariffs, and it's just like. But to me, that frustrated because Apple is the one that should be paying more than anybody. They're the one that parks their money overseas. They're the one that's skirting the taxes. The mom and pop businesses that are fucked by the tariffs are still going to have to pay. So now you're disproportionately punishing the people that are actually doing the right thing for the country in the first place. They're building their small businesses. They're paying into the system.
Yeah. And I do think one thing that, again, I don't like the way it's executed. I don't agree with a lot of things that are happening in this administration. But I do like that it kind of shone a light on something that didn't seem like it was getting talked about by either party, which is there is a lot of decay happening, which I do. That's one thing I have a lot of hope for you, is that you live there, you reside over it, you've experienced it, and you speak to it. And I sometimes wonder if you get frustrated. You have to, I mean, you can find a more diplomatic way of saying it, but have you been frustrated at all with the way that it's worded amongst the Democratic Party, where it seems like it's a lot more identity politics, which matters, but not, to me, it's not as prescient as, I don't know, some people are pressing as people who can't afford to feed their families and are losing jobs.
Yeah, especially because like there are a lot of people that I think Democrats are understood to care about. Like low-income people, black and brown people are like disproportionately caught up in the economic pain when something like this happens. And so I do think my party needs to do a much better job, especially with the kind of finger wagging that you're talking about. I think we are like very prone to that. And I've seen it happen on any side. I think a lot of people, you get this sense of like moral conviction, and you're so sure of it that you start to think it makes it okay to be an asshole, because you're deep down like the thing, and this is like far right and far left movements through the ages, but I think it's definitely true of far right and far left in the U.S. right now. You just think like you can treat people however you want, you say whatever you want about them because like
they're evil.
They're evil, and if they win, all is lost.
And their pain becomes intellectualized. Like you'll see like think pieces of like, why does the South love MAGA? Like how can we like why is neo-Nazism on the rise through like a chart? And I feel like it misses the feeling of low-income people saying like, no, we're in pain.
And I think pain is a really important place to start, because like if you encounter somebody in pain and you approach that with compassion and you actually listen, that's a very different place to come from than like either how can I use this or how am I going to judge the choices that this person made while in pain. Especially if they have developed, very understandably, a distrust of everybody. Right?
So what are things the Democratic Party can do better? Because like I like you go speak to both sides.
Dude, we've begged so many Democrats to come on this platform.
You were the only guy that agreed, and then you had to back out, allegedly, because you had to do debate prep.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That seems like a big deal.
I'm glad it worked out in the end.
Good excuse. We've been trying to. It was like Mark Cuban, who was obviously a surrogate for the party, and he came on. He was fantastic. But like everybody we asked, is they just wouldn't do it.
Look, there's this, even like going on.
I don't want to get away from Alex's question.
No, but I mean to your point, like part of it is like where do we go? Right. To me, especially after we lose, our party or any party has this debate of like, what do we have to say and how do we say it? To me, there's actually three things we need to deal with. What do we have to say? I mean, like the policies, the ideas. If they're right, we should hold to it. If we're not so sure they're right, we should rethink them. Right, so there's that. Then there's how do we say it? That's the tone, the message, the style, whether people feel like you're wagging a finger at them or not, whether people think you get the kind of pain they're going through or not, right? And then the part nobody talks about is where we say it. And I think right now where we say it is kind of everything. Because there are so many spaces where people, like I'm sure you don't think yourselves as maybe a political show or a news show. Well, the reality is there's probably a lot of folks who like this is where they're getting their news because like they're not sitting watching CNN. I mean, I remember the moment when I was back in college that I realized I was getting more of my news from the Daily Show than I was from like news sources, right? And so I think it's really important for anyone practicing politics, and definitely my party after what just happened to it, to be saying, okay, where else do we need to be? And like it's all well and good for me to keep going on Fox News, and I will, although they don't seem to be inviting me as much lately. But a lot of
he just called y'all pussy.
I like
that. Talk your shit, Pete.
I'm just saying, like we were really close to having a conversation about the whole like signal gate to put the wrong dude on your classified.
And what happened? Then they canceled it?
Just didn't quite get around.
Was
to
it debate prep?
So,
they were working on something.
They were busy. But like a lot of people aren't watching left, right, or center. They're not watching like television.
Someone you just said, these clowns have the same level of input as Miles or Maya. Whoa there, partner, pump the brakes.
Cable news all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think my party has this illusion that we're the savvy ones about tech. And 15 years ago we were, right? Like we were onto things like Facebook and social media probably a little more than the right was, or we were there first. But at least since 2016, the Twitter election, like that has been true less, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to be prepared to go everywhere, and that's always been my style. I mean, largely because I had to when I was first running for president. I would talk to anybody who would listen, which at first wasn't a lot of people, and I would go to any place that would have me. But to go back a little bit in what I was saying, like I do think we also need to revisit like what it is we're offering, because if it sounds like what we're offering is, let's just go back. This isn't working out. Obviously, the tariffs are hurting people. He's consolidating absolute power. Like lots of things are bad about this, which is true. Therefore, let's go back to that.
But you have Bernie and AOC who clearly have a message that's resonating. Why isn't the party getting behind that?
So I think a lot of
Big crowds doesn't mean that your message is electorally popular. What it means is that you can draw big crowds. That's it. Now, the type of person that can draw big crowds might also be suited well to electoral politics today, just because of the type of environment we live in, but not necessarily. Again, like Bernie Sanders underperformed Kamala Harris on that ticket against Trump. Kamala got a greater vote share in Vermont than Bernie did. The idea that just because you could turn out a lot of people, especially, no offense, young people who don't fucking vote, doesn't really mean much in terms of like, oh, like this person could be the next, leader. Now, I think AOC can, but not just because she could turn out big crowds, but because of other moves she's making, but...
what they have to say will get more and more traction in the party, especially on the economic piece, right? This idea that you have a lot of regular people in regular life getting screwed over by the way things work. And if we don't have better services and fairer taxes, like we're just never going to get through that.
And it's thrown in their face. And it's thrown in their face quite often. Look how great Biden's economy is. Look at the stock market. And they're like, that doesn't affect me at all.
Cereal's $10.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
I would feel deeply offended if I was them, especially when you throw that kind of support behind.
Motherfucker, middle class people will complain about the cost of cereal, and you motherfuckers never had to buy bagged cereal before, okay? That's when you know shit is rough. When they start bringing home the bagged cereal, that's when you know, fuck, this month was not good. Fuck you. I hate the middle class. Let it be known. Sometimes when I speak, I sound like I have care and compassion for all of America. That is not true, okay? When I was poor, I hated the middle class. And when I'm rich now, I hate the middle class. We need to do everything we can to destroy the middle class. Spiritually, financially, in every way, okay? God, I hate the middle class. God, I hate them. God, I hate the middle class. Unless they're subscribed to me.
One specific party, and I think that's why you saw a lot of them start to migrate. So then what do you do? Like, how do you get working class people back?
Well, first, I think we need to be more disciplined and louder about that economic message. So look, to be clear, we will be advancing policies that make sure you are economically better off. What does that mean? That means that you can, the one thing I think people do give us a lot of credit for is healthcare, but there's more to do on that, right? We're not going to let them tear up Obamacare. We're going to make sure that there's a fairer tax code, like not just standing against the tax cuts for the rich that he's about to push through Congress, but actually having a tax code where there's not a benefit to a corporation, like moving billions of dollars overseas, where there's not a benefit to kind of hiding your worth. We're not better off basically with wealth.
Can you mention that maybe it's too scary of a word. I think it's ideologically worth fighting over, though. You need to say the bad word. The G word, okay? And not the one I got kicked off my StarCraft 2 team for saying. You need the globalism word. Tax harmonization, okay? In music, harmony is when you've got like a melody and you've got harmony that plays underneath, okay? Harmonization is when you bring things into concordance with each other, so they're working with each other. Global tax harmony or harmonization is necessary to prevent capital flight when you increase your taxes, right? What does this mean? Let's say that so earlier I said we should bump up the capital gains brackets. We should bump up the marginal income brackets. One thing that we need to do is we need to abolish international tax havens where it is tax preferential to go and warehouse your fucking corporate offices in Ireland, okay, or in other countries and gain some type of tax benefit for it. That's bullshit. But the only way really that you can fight stuff like that is through like cooperative tax policies, like global minimum taxes and shit like that. And this requires, wait for it, globalism. You got to do it.
Than work, which is where the tax code is right now.
Yeah.
We, I think, need to be much more clear about what we would provide in terms of services for people. Like we're the only country, I think maybe Papua New Guinea is the only other country in the world that doesn't do a policy for parental leave, like some level of like national guarantee that when you have a kid,
Don't start this, bro.
you will get leave.
Don't start this, man. I got people trying to have kids working at this company right here. we cannot recover from this financially.
It can be done, I promise. Because we did it when I was mayor. We did it locally for city employees, and
we at our company we pay for anybody that wants to have their eggs frozen.
It's great.
We don't hire women though. But we will pay.
There's always a loophole. There's always some type of loophole, dude. These middle rich. You know? We need to tax them.
No, I tease,
the cost of eggs are too high, bro.
Wow.
I tease.
See what you did.
But yes, we should absolutely pay for it.
Sorry, I'll finish and I have another question based on.
But I think there are also some things that we need to kind of rewire in the way government works to make it work better for people. And I lived this. So for example, I'm watching them basically burn the federal government down, and obviously I've got problems with the way they're destroying, cancer research or making it harder for the FAA to keep airplanes safe. Like a lot of that is bad, but I will also admit that I have been furious and frustrated with the way things work in our federal government, and it's actually gotten to where it makes it harder to do things that I think progressives in particular care about. Building things, building housing, building roads and bridges, which I lived for 4 years, building clean energy projects, like stuff we should objectively definitely be doing. And we've gotten in our own way with these layers of process, layers of procedure, all of them introduced with good intentions, but which collectively have made it almost impossible or unaffordable to do anything.
So you want less regulations?
So we need they need to be smarter, and there needs to be less procedure. Still powerful regulations to keep people safe.
So there should be a department to make sure the government is efficient. I think that's like really I think that's where you're going, and it's great.
This is another example. Did you work on that in the private sector? Isn't that what?
Yeah.
What was that company that you work for? The consulting company,
Yeah.
McKinsey. Yeah. And isn't that partially like what governments will hire a company like that to do Doge stuff, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it. Again,
you're a fucking Doge. You're such a Doge, dude.
If Doge was actually about government efficiency, I'd be all for it.
But it's not about that.
No.
What is it about?
It's about power. Look, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Because
you telling me people in government are concerned with power?
I know. It's shocking. I know. Hot take.
Truth bombs being dropped on Flagrant.
No, but look at it this way. When I was in government in South, like as mayor, when I had my kind of small government that I was running, we took whole departments apart and put them back together.
Can we please create a global currency? There already is a global currency. It's called the USD, baby.
Weren't performing very well. And by the way, that was hard. Like one of the reasons I've always had a problem with this president is like he emerged kind of play acting, like firing people for fun, right? It was like his tagline, "You're fired." For me, at least, as like a young CEO, basically of a city government, other than dealing with violence and death, the worst part of my job was firing people. Like I hated it, especially because they weren't. It wasn't necessarily a bad person, but you had a person who was in a role that they didn't fit in, and their department wasn't doing as well as I thought it needed to do to serve residents. I would have this very painful conversation where we'd sit down, I'd look them in the eye, and that sucked for obviously most of all for them. But anyway, we were not afraid to do that because you have to do that.
Yeah.
But look at what happened when they came in, right? If this was actually about government efficiency, then the problem you would be solving, which is a real problem, is that in the federal government, it is too hard to reward your top performers. So you could be somebody who could be commanding a multi-million-dollar salary in the private sector, working on something wildly important, but there's just no way that you're getting, you're in your particular pay grade, same as everybody else. And to remove your bottom performers. Like a lot of people who've been in and out of business and government will tell me, like when I was in the private sector and the public sector, actually, like the top 10% were pretty much the same, these amazing driven people. The government ones weren't compensated as well, but they were purpose driven. But the bottom 10% was completely different because I couldn't do anything about the bottom 10%. Right? So imagine if Doge had come in and they had gone through every department and said, okay, we're going to create a way to reward the top performers, and we're also going to analyze who's...
Thin ship equals fast ship. Is there a way to see like the formula? Like how much does it matter how much your ship is expanded?
Either whose job description is no longer needed, or their job performance is not there. And even though it's painful, even though maybe it's politically tough, like we're going to show them the door. That would be one thing. But they just sent an email to everybody. Many of whom were in fact top performers. Like some of the people they fired who got caught up in this thing, people got fired just based on whether you were in a category called probationary employee. But to be clear, probationary isn't like you fucked up and you're on probation.
You could
Often, you can actually be because you were promoted. You could be a 7-year veteran at the FAA, or maybe you'd been there as a contractor, but you were so good that the FAA said, we want to hire you now as a government employee. And even though it might have been a little pay cut, you went for it. And you're probationary. And then next thing you know, like you wake up one day and this office, department, whatever Doge is, clearly hasn't like gone through and checked like who's doing a good job or who's. There's no way because there wasn't even time to do that. And they're just like, guess what, you're fired. Too bad.
I think there's, I wouldn't say unanimous support with the criticism of Doge, but I think that there is a lot of support for the way that it's been handled. Though I would also say that the idea of an agency that is attacking bloat and excess spending of the government is a bipartisan supported issue as well. I think initially when when Elon first announces this, and I think it's Elon and Vivek, people are really supportive of it, I think on both sides. They're like, yeah, let's cut some government spending.
If you're actually doing it for real, and that's another part of the answer to your question of like what Democrats should be talking about, because I think we're the ones who believe, some say we believe it to a fault, like we believe it naively, but we're the ones who believe that the government has if you do it right, government has the power to make people better off. But if we're going to do that, let's actually do it. And part of that does mean like taking a hard look at everything we do. And I mean, I remember, again, most of my examples will come from transportation, right? But I remember something that went on with the FAA where they had to get some special waiver in order to allow a certain class of airplane to fly because there was a regulation that said there had to be a switch to turn off the no smoking light. And this was written back when sometimes you turned off the no smoking light. Now, obviously, there's just always a no smoking light because you can't smoke on airplanes. And there's this like scramble. You know, that's the kind of stuff that we
hold on.
Turn off the no smoke because there was a regulation that said there had to be a switch to turn off the no smoking light. And this was written back when sometimes you turned off the no smoking light. Now, obviously, there's just always a no smoking light because you can't.
Okay, when you talk about cutting bullshit regulations that don't matter anymore, okay, look at what he just said. So he identified a regulation. There's some requirement to have a switch for this bullshit, right? But it's not just like, oh, we have this because it's wacky and crazy and stupid. It was like, there used to be a time when you had the no smoking light on and when you had the no smoking light off. That's when the regulation was around. We don't do that anymore because now there's no smoking on all flights. So therefore, this is a regulation that can be cut, right? We identify a regulation. We know where it came from originally, and because we know where it came from, because we know the circumstances don't apply anymore, now we can get rid of it. That's a good way to deregulate or to get rid of regulations that no longer apply and just hamper private industry or any industry.
Smoke on airplanes, and there's this like scramble. You know, that's the kind of stuff that we should absolutely be getting rid of. And there are like things that we do in government sometimes, or in the military, we call it a self-licking ice cream cone. Like there's definitely things that are there. These just like self-perpetuating processes that nobody would have come up with on their own, but they're still there. I think we should absolutely own that space because we have a good faith belief that government should serve people better and should work better. And we should be the ones who are making that happen.
So on that, so this idea with Doge, it seems to me, and again, I only know like the most surface level version of it, is that the way that the government becomes more efficient is just firing a bunch of people. That seems just like saving money. I don't know if that's how it becomes more efficient.
Good job for understanding the difference between those two things.
The efficiency is getting rid of the bureaucracy that stops a plane from flying just because it doesn't have an on and off switch for a smoking light, right?
But it's surgery because you don't want to get rid of the part of the bureaucracy that makes sure
is good and protects people. Right? I 100%, because I think that there is altruism and benevolence in a lot of these policies.
This is where the PSCO strategy maybe, or the Destiny strategy, whatever you call it, I think should come in. You need to start asking questions, I guess, just to get it out there. Do you think the current administration is making the good kind of cuts or the bad kind of cuts? Like, what do you think? Because now we've identified that there are good ways to cut and there are bad ways to cut. Well, what do you think the current admin is doing? Make that clear, I think. Illustrate that for the listeners.
Policies, right? They're trying to protect
they're all there for
people.
some reason or another.
Yeah, and like maybe some is like, I don't know, what have you experienced? Like you were, Secretary of Transportation, like when you're trying to rebuild some bridge or whatever like that, what was the biggest hiccup that you experienced that you're like, we got to just get this out of the way? There's no way we're going to be able to improve people's lives if this is here. What is an example of that?
Well, so there's an entire process where to permit a federal project, you have to listen to you have to take in every comment from anybody who wants to weigh in, and then you have to respond to every comment, or a human has to kind of review all of that. Which, by the way, one thing I'm really worried about is if you have, let's say there's some regulation coming and an industry wants to stop it, can they
just keep
AI?
Commenting?
Yeah, or can you use AI? Because it used to be like, well, you'd have to take the trouble to write a letter, or at least go to the trouble of like getting people to write form letters, right? Now you could write customized letters.
So you use bureaucracy to fight bureaucracy.
Well, you use bureaucracy to stop something from happening.
Yeah.
Which is a real problem if that's a thing that needed to happen, especially because you also need to go through that process to remove a regulation or to replace or to modernize it. So there's this level of problem, and I encountered it all the time. I mean, right here in New York, right, there are so many major transportation projects going, and I'm proud to have worked on them. BQE, Hudson River Tunnel, and that's one of the biggest transportation projects in our time. Second Avenue Subway.
That Second Avenue Subway we don't want. I'm tell you what, as a New Yorker, we don't want it. We never needed it. It's never been an issue. I remember when you guys started building, we're like, who the fuck is this for? Nobody on the Upper East Side, from where it goes to where it ends, uses the subway. That's all old ladies. They take Uber, taxis. Nobody. There hasn't been a dumb. I'm sorry if this is your idea, but it's so fucking stupid. There's never been a dumber idea for a subway. There are so many other places we could put subways. We could add some more trains, but Second Avenue specifically, there's a train on Lex.
But here's the crazy thing.
You walk 2 more blocks, you get a train.
I don't know my New York geography as well as you do, but the really crazy thing about the Second Avenue subway is the tunnel's already there. It's been there for 50 years.
Well, just because there's a tunnel, you don't need to put a subway. Like, I think how the Jews going to get it? Yeah, we need to organize like
This
a bar
is what he's
mitzvah.
working about. This is the face he's working about.
Like, this is why I don't come on these podcasts. Okay, go.
Where was I?
Upper East Side.
Right, so I will always defend SEC News because there's like
Is Bernie's wealth tax needed for free healthcare? A wealth tax won't pay for anything. Wealth taxes just don't raise a lot of money. Okay, that's why you should hate them. There are other reasons to hate them, but they're not good revenue generators. Okay, so no.
this is a neighborhood that like deserves good transit the way everybody else has good transit. Yeah, but it doesn't go all the way up to what is it,
where?
past 125th.
To where? Nobody needs to go up to 125th and 2nd Avenue.
He doesn't ride the subway.
I'm telling you, you don't need. I'm telling you, we don't use it. We
It's
don't
also
use
in
it.
the charter. Yeah, I know.
I used to live up there.
Okay, would you use it if it was there?
I did. I went to school on the Upper East Side my entire life.
No, you didn't live. You didn't live.
I did live on the Upper East Side, but I didn't live on the Upper East Side. I was on the subway. Bro. I was on the subway. Listen, you live in Far Rock. Yo, give him a bonus.
I used to work. I know, that's crazy. I used to work in New York Presbyterian, and that walk.
Wait, do you want to make the advanced thruster shit if you have the advanced asteroid processing? You probably do, right? I think probably.
Did suck walking from York Avenue to Lexington.
Okay, so how are you going to get there?
I'm just saying.
So how are you going to get to that 2nd Avenue line?
What are you talking about?
It's First Avenue.
We're talking about the subway right now.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the walk that I would have to do every day going and to and from work to York to Lex sucked. It would have been great if the 2nd Avenue train was there. And
It's
that
not third
Now
level.
they got to walk 2 less blocks.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yo,
God.
avenues are
How
like
spoiled.
3 blocks.
Crosstown blocks, right?
Yeah, those avenues.
Those
They're-
avenues,
Come
yeah.
on,
Pushing
man.
limits to my New York expertise.
No, you got this. You got it down.
And like to get to the airport, it's much simpler once we get this thing going.
This is
Well, we need a subway on 2nd Avenue. You never said one New Yorker.
That's just not
I actually went near it.
You went near.
I didn't go on it. I went near it. I went near it, and I was like, is anybody even there? I looked. I was like, is anybody here? Nobody did.
I don't want to like.
Is there a subway there beyond?
I don't want to like challenge your expertise as somebody who once went near it.
Yeah.
But
I went near it.
a lot of New Yorkers seem to really want this because I got a lot of calls and we worked hard on it. But the thing,
That's bots.
I will always.
Now the 6th
That's
train.
bots,
So
bro.
this guy hasn't been on a subway in
That's
10 years.
Chinese bots.
Why are we talking
That's Chinese bots, bro. That's people from Jersey
Also
trying
say
to
this,
drain our money.
the 456 is the most crowded train.
It's very crowded.
So if you're on it, you're like, yo, if there's
Very
something to
crowded.
ease congestion relief, that'd be nice.
There's
Sounds
safety.
like a great idea.
There's safety in it being
That's the whole
crowded.
system.
There's safety in it being crowded. You never had a homeless guy jerk off on you when it's crowded.
Actually, that's what you try to do it.
No, you're
There's so
lying.
much cover, and you can just
Ow, what's this?
Put it on me.
This is what we do for a living.
Before we get too far away from it, you said that
That's a New York
I'm
City
sorry.
tariff.
You said Doge. We all agree that there's money being wasted in government, and we were for the idea of Doge, but you said they're only doing it for power. How is what they're doing for power? Because it seems like they're just focusing on cutting down expenditures so they have something that can be like, look, we saved all this money. But how's it a power play?
It's so crazy that in 2025, like, you've got all these people that worship Doge. You guys understand who Doge was in the 90s, right?
What you do at Initech is you take the specifications from the customers and you bring them down to the software engineers.
Yes, that's right. Well, then I just have to ask, why couldn't the customers just take them directly to the software people, huh? Well, I'll tell you why.
It's crazy.
Because it makes everything, because they're not going through the regular, like any kind of process we have to like check with Congress or evaluate which of the programs are actually doing something and which ones aren't, or which people are good at their jobs and which aren't. It means all that really matters is whether you're on the White House's good side. And
So if you're on the White House's good side, it sends a message basically, be on our good side, we won't clip your program. That is one way of interpreting it, for sure.
Yeah. And they're doing this with everything. The tariffs are like this.
Of course.
Right? In the end, if your company or your country or your industry gets on his good side, then you get out. That has nothing to do with whether it's good economic policy or whether it's going to help, my neighbors in Michigan, but it is something that helps consolidate power, right? Law firms. He's sending this message like, if your law firm doesn't get on my good side, then you're going to be screwed because we're going to use, even though it's completely illegal, we're going to manipulate your access to security clearances or anything else because I don't like you.
Isn't that what Biden did to Mayor Adams, though, when he was just trying to get some upgrades?
No, I would argue the opposite is true. I would argue what happened was, and I know he was just sitting in here talking about this.
He just wants some upgrades, dude. He wants to build a 24-hour strip club.
Everybody wants upgrades. I get it.
That's way better than a 2nd Avenue subway if you want something that Polish people can hang on.
But what really happened is...
This is why they don't come off.
A little different than Fox News, right?
No, like, think about what it means if you get caught or accused of, like in his case, being mixed up with a foreign government and making policy decisions based on that.
Being a politician.
And but that can't be how low our expectations are.
That's how we all look at it.
Hold on. But Pete, during your time as the Secretary of Transportation, right? Did nobody try to bribe you or anything? Like, there was
my God.
How'd you keep the planes in the air? What did you do?
If I got an upgrade, and by the way, not because the Turkish government liked me, but like because I was a frequent flyer on United or whatever.
Yeah.
If I got an upgrade, I would have my security detail go to the gate agent and negotiate the downgrade, so I didn't have to deal with, not because there was a rule about it, but so I didn't have to deal with like a bunch of people on Twitter saying like, look at this asshole in first class.
I'll take all your upgrades.
You better than me, bro.
If United Global Services, I'm
That's
not.
crazy.
I need that global services.
Pete, come on now.
And don't get me wrong, I love
You're
the
doing
upgrade.
downgrades and trying to build a Second Avenue subway. You're making horrible decisions, bro. People do not relate to this stuff right here, Pete. Pete, who gets a downgrade on Delta or United?
Because I don't want people asking. I'm regulating airlines. I shouldn't be like up there. Now I take the upgrade. I will take private sector. I love the upgrade.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is not about upgrades. This is about whether somebody who has been indicted for a crime can get out of it by getting on the good side of the. The whole point of this country is that no one person should have too much power. Like, to me, that's the whole point of a country. The king was somebody who had too much power.
Yep.
And we said we're not going to do it that way. There were ferocious debates at the time of the founding over whether to even create a presidency, because Jefferson was worried that if we had a president, it would turn into a king.
Yeah.
And they kind of hit a compromise where we created the president, but we took all these measures in the Constitution to make sure that that presidency didn't become too powerful. And this is like a part of the texture of our country. One of my favorite fun fact about Washington, D.C. is the Jefferson Memorial, the round domed columned structure with the statue of Jefferson.
Linneo even.
Has him perfectly aligned with the exact center line of the White House, so that if you're standing in the Blue Room, which is in the middle of the White House, looking south, you have there's a straight line.
He's watching you.
Because he's watching. He's watching the executive, saying he doesn't want the executive office, the president, to get out of
about that. Lincoln Memorial and Jefferson Memorial, right? Both liberal politicians. For the time?
Jefferson.
You think he was like extreme conservative?
Kind of both, right? I mean, he was agrarian. He was definitely more kind of libertarian, if we were to try to map it onto today's terms.
Whole joke right now.
Yeah,
but
fucking idiot.
I was trying to shoehorn a joke.
Let's go with it.
No, the joke is. Come on, buddy. He's so right. He's so a mile away. He's so right. It's a stupid joke.
We say the Second Avenue subway after 50 years.
There was never a Second Avenue subway.
Okay, Pete, here's the actual question I have.
bad.
I hear a lot of what you're saying is tax the rich, they need to pay their taxes. I remember moving from Texas to California. Texas, I started paying taxes, and it was like, I remember I was working at Verizon Wireless doing a horrible job selling cell phones, and my commission would get taxed at like 40%. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But then I'm driving, the roads suck. The schools, from what I heard, sucked. New York, same thing. Very high taxes. There's no Second Avenue subway. Schools are horrible. If you have any kind of money, it seems like you're sending your kids to private schools, or you live in such a rich neighborhood that the public school is basically a private school. What the tax money seems like it gets wasted. It doesn't get used wisely. So I have like an aversion to. Fair enough, but then I'm driving, the roads suck. The school selling cell phones, and my commission would get taxed at like 40%. And I was like, okay, fair enough, but then I'm driving, the roads suck.
Somebody in chat asked me earlier, how do I know so much about taxes? It's because for like the first 5 or 6 years of being a streamer, I did my own taxes. So I would never say something as retarded as like, well, I'm sorry, when he says the tax were like 40%, that's not your state taxes. Your state taxes are never that high. He's probably telling you that would be your state plus your federal plus your FICA or self-employment or whatever. But that's Jesus, whatever. I don't know.
There was never a Second Avenue subway.
Pay their taxes. I remember moving from Texas to California. Texas, I started paying taxes, and it was like, I remember I was working at Verizon Wireless doing a horrible job selling cell phones, and my commission would get taxed at like 40%. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But then I'm driving, the roads suck. The schools, from what I heard, sucked. New York, same thing. Very high taxes. There's no Second Avenue subway. Schools are horrible. If you have any kind of money, it seems like you're sending your kids to private schools, or you live in such a rich neighborhood that the public school is basically a private school. What the tax money seems like it gets wasted. It doesn't get used wisely. So I have like an aversion to, oh, they should pay their taxes, because my reaction is, I've seen what happens when people pay taxes.
I agree with that.
I'm sympathetic to this feeling in America, though.
I think what he said about California was.
I'm not going to shit on one state or another, but there is obviously a relationship between the results you see and your willingness.
Although not for property taxes. Property taxes are one of the rare taxes, and I actually like. I think economists have a name for this, and I don't know what it is, but I like taxes that are, I think they call them use taxes, where the tax is literally affecting, or it comes from the people who are using the thing. So roads, I think, are a really easy thing to figure out taxes for. People just don't want to raise taxes on them, because I think most roads, I believe, are paid for by gas tax. That I believe is levied state by state. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. But if you want to make your roads better, well, then you just increase the fuel tax, the gas tax, and then you can, and then people that use it, have to pay taxes on it, which is good. Property taxes, when he talked about schools are actually one of the few places in America where you can immediately see the impact of your taxes. Because if you've ever been in a city and you go to the rich neighborhoods, their public schools are amazing. And if you go to the poor neighborhoods, their public schools are shit shows. But that's because public schools, from my understanding everywhere in the US, or at least in most places, are funded by the property taxes. So if you're in a rich neighborhood, you've got lots of taxes going to your school. And if you're in a poor neighborhood, you got very few taxes going to your school. So that's like an area we can immediately see the difference between like, oh, this is what a well-funded school looks like, and this is what a shitty funded school looks like, yeah.
To trust that there's anything you're getting out of your tax dollars.
My trust is very low.
Especially with
Americans'
California.
trust is very low,
Yeah.
right? And if you look at, I know Democrats always like to point to Scandinavian countries, but I'm going to do it. One thing you notice about those countries, which do have a pretty high tax burden.
I lived in a poor fucking area as a younger kid and then moved to rich as fuck schools, and the difference was crazy. Yeah, bro, dude, one of the, this would be quite a bit left on a lot of things. No, actually, I think I was already pretty left. But when COVID happened, fucking Nathan's school, if you're from Omaha, it's for the West Side School District. These motherfuckers were like 5 or 6 years old. No, COVID wasn't that long ago. Fuck, all kids are the same age to me. What is the, how long ago was COVID? It would have been 4 years ago, so he was like 9, 10 years old. These motherfuckers are getting their personal iPads assigned to them to take home. And I'm hearing like news stories about how in certain districts, they've got to like park vans outside of kids' home to provide Wi-Fi and shit. So some of these families could even have access to the internet. And then like meanwhile, like in my kid's school district, they get take home like device. It's just the difference, the disparity is crazy.
But
that these kids, these like kindergartners almost, they're not kindergartners, like first, second, third grade, these people are getting their own personal iPads assigned to them. Jesus.
Reason there's also a higher sense among people that it's fair is that they get good results. They have good healthcare and good education. And that doesn't just happen because you put the money in. But if you put the money in and you do it right, then the public's going to be more trusting, right? That you're getting something out of those tax dollars.
So I think it's easy to do when like every girl's hot.
Huh? This guy.
No, like, have you been to Scandinavia? It's like every girl's hot, right? So
you're asking the wrong guy.
Sorry, the dudes are hot there too. The dudes are good-looking guys. If you're into that look, I don't know if you're into that look. Ow, what's going on? They're so good-looking that you're like, I'll spend 75%. Listen, this is crazier take than building a fucking subway on 2nd Avenue. Who the hell's gonna use that, Akash, you think?
Oh, man.
Oh, what I'm trying to say is, if you go to Denmark, you go to Sweden.
Saying if you're good-looking, there's going to be a higher perception of tax
You'll spend a little bit more. You know what I mean? It's something to look at.
Because you're just happy to be there.
You're happy to be there. Have you talked to Scandinavians when they travel abroad and what they see?
Can I get a real answer from this man? Where's some real fucking
This is a real experience. This is a lived experience. I'm asking. I got dudes too. They're tall. They're handsome. They're big.
Not everybody looks at, like, it's so funny. There's always these like things like, oh, all these Swedish people look beautiful. Blah, blah. It's not. These are the people that you're seeing in the media. Okay, the average Swede is not a fucking supermodel. No offense, I love Swedish people. Okay, not the average like whatever person from whatever country is not a fucking supermodel. This is such a stupid impression that Americans have. Also, the idea that Scandinavians travel to other countries and are like, oh my god, I miss Scandinavia so much because all of my Sweden and Norway are amazingly perfect, beautiful fucking countries. Like, bro, in the winter, these people don't even have sunlight. Okay. Even in Stockholm, like at your winter solstice, there's like fucking 5 minutes of twilight a day, okay? Not that they hate their countries, but we jerk off these countries a little bit too much sometimes, all right?
Facial hair, they're Vikings.
Where were we?
I'm just saying.
We were getting to a real point.
Where was
This got derailed like a 2nd Avenue subway.
All right, guys, let's take a break for a second because it's time to help you get your money up, okay?
Our money up.
Secret that the you deserve. The at-fault driver is $1 she can't. That settlement as small as possible. When Morgan & Morgan at fault, see if 29 company offer from the insurance firm can be disaster-free unless they win. Just visit forthepeople.com/flagrant or dial #law #529. This is a paid advert.
I'm saying that
I back off.
I'm saying if people don't see the results, especially we're coming along saying like, okay, everybody's gonna have to like pay into this. They're gonna say, well, fuck off. I'm not seeing the results. Right. Now, I think that's a nuanced story because the best results sometimes, especially when you're in safety, you know, my kind of a big part of my job. It wasn't just building; it was transportation. Right. A big part of the results is what doesn't happen.
Right.
Good, bad things that don't happen.
You don't notice your school being good. You just notice when it's bad.
Yeah. And you don't notice your road being smooth. You just notice when there's a pothole in it. Right. And you don't notice when an airplane doesn't crash. And you don't notice when you have clean, safe drinking water. By the way, that's okay. Like that's the point. Like you shouldn't have to worry about whether your drinking water is clean.
Yeah.
Because if you did, you wouldn't be able to worry about whatever else matters to you.
Mega truth bombs
so
being dropped.
I don't think anybody can argue that the American taxpayer has gotten their money's worth.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of reasons for that. Part of it is, though, that we underinvest. And we underinvest not because that the overall tax rates are too low. I don't think that most people should be paying more in taxes. I do think certain people should be paying much more in taxes.
Most people should
and
be.
That's where we get to like the giant multi-billion-dollar corporation that figures out a way to do their books and pay zero.
Yep.
Right?
And
When
they
they are
brag
doing
about
just
it.
fine.
Why is Warren Buffett bragging about it?
Well, I mean, it's look.
Tell him to pay up. Why the like? Don't.
But we can't. You can't blame him for using the rules of the system.
I actually like him calling attention to.
I find
because
that.
if they don't, if the whole capitalist system, for good and for ill, is that if you don't play that to your advantage,
then
somebody else will, and they will beat you.
Yep.
Right. So instead of asking somebody to leave money on the table, we should just fix the rules so that they're more fair.
True.
And that's the
major
investment side.
truth
But the other
bomb.
side of it
Wow.
is throwing money at the problem is not enough. Like it is clearly true, and this is the other point about the Second Avenue subway, which again I will defend to my death that it is a good project.
Have you been on it?
We can't, dude.
We haven't
It's
built it.
bigger.
We haven't built it.
You haven't built it yet?
It's not there yet.
I remember reading about this in 2008 on the subway. They had ads coming in 2015, Second Avenue subway.
Right. So that's my point.
And we were so excited, dude. There was like
I was
parades.
I was excited.
There was parades in New York
I was
City.
excited.
Dude, I'm telling you, there was parades in New York City. There was a memo sent out there like we're building Second Avenue. We were like, our fucking sucker on your subway.
That was the point of this damn parade. They live off the east side.
I mean, it was.
But what is very hard to defend.
It was going to totally reinvigorate that economically destitute area called the Upper East Side.
What's really impossible to defend is how long it has taken. I'm not joking when I say it's been there for 50. The tunnel's there for 50 years. It's a 100-year project.
And even with only 5 minutes of sunlight a day, Finland's still the happiest country in the world 8 years in a row. Weird, huh? Wow, so weird. As another American tells me about Europe, and I can tell you're an American because Finland isn't fucking Scandinavian, you retarded fuck. Fuck you.
It started in 1920.
Which is nuts. And the cost of it.
But it's not that. It's like obviously the rail project in California. We were doing a show in Hawaii, and it was a joke that everybody kind of makes, but there was a rail project out there, not underground, and they put $12 billion into it. It hasn't moved a centimeter in 10 years. And from my understanding, for people out there, they're like, it's just pure corruption. It's not even bureaucracy.
I don't know that that's true, but I know that if you see that much money going in and you don't see results, I don't blame you for assuming it's corruption.
Right. Well, where could it go?
I think a lot of it is bureaucracy, actually, and it's the inability to get even basic things done. There are exceptions. We worked on one thing I worked on that I'm very excited about is another high-speed line that goes from Las Vegas to California, to Southern California. They could be open by 2028 if they hit all of their marks and everything goes well. There's some reasons why that was different, though. And part of why it was different was a public-private partnership, which created a different, and it's a red state next to a blue state. But it's California too, right? So it's Nevada and California. Sponsored by Nevada, which is a swing state, by the way, not a red state, I would argue.
Good point.
And
good point.
And they did some right-of-way stuff where a big part of the route is actually just like right down the median of I-15. So it's easy, comparatively easy, compared to having to buy. The problem with Second Avenue subway, the cost of it, sounds like you know a lot about this.
Loves trains.
Do love trains.
You're good. I love trains too.
Okay.
Gotta let him laugh here.
No, I feel like this hostility to trains over here. So unless somebody in the room is on board with trains.
It's just you and I in this convo. Right. This podcast is now me and you. Just don't let them laugh.
We love trains and mostly right on top of them hoes.
So the reason it's costing so much here is to even like put in like a little power facility, let alone a station, you've got to buy real estate out in one of the most dense and expensive places, probably the most dense and expensive place in the entire
most
world.
expensive buildings in the world.
It's incredibly complicated to even just do the signal work in the stations, right? Anyway, my point is, I agree that we have to have better results, better return on taxpayer money. But when it goes well, I mean, again, we're all living off of the value, even though the internet has proven to be a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Many people, including like these dope guys, right, made all of their money off of something that was literally invented by the federal government, the internet.
That's a great point, honestly.
So it can work. I'm not here to say it always does work.
Yeah.
It can work, but you have to actually have people who care about it working versus just gathering their own power and making it all about
We're not, by any means, and don't let me speak for you guys, like hardline, the government is horrible and everything about it is horrible at all. We live in New York City. Like, we understand the importance of like rules and regulations. You got someone living above you and below you, they're blasting music. After 10 o'clock, you're like, I would like the government to step in here and make a rule where they can't do that. It's nice. So like, I think we understand more than most Americans how important regulation can be to you living like a happy, fruitful life. So if you're living in a house somewhere in the middle of nowhere, your next neighbor's 3 miles away, I get why you're like, government, get the fuck out of my life. I get it. When you live on top of people and below people, you see
I think that's true. When you live in a city, when you live in a dense neighborhood, you're like more aware of the importance.
100%.
Although I'd also argue wherever you live, right?
Sure.
You count on things from national defense to railroads.
I'm not saying you don't, but I think that it's easier for them to ignore them.
It's more
as
in
you
your
were
face
saying.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you can't confuse yourself for not living. If you get on the subway, which I still can't tell if you ever have, you
What, me?
I don't know. I'm trying to infer.
I grew up. I was born and raised in the subway.
Oh,
This
Phil,
is
great.
probably
You were
all
born
I
in
know.
Madison
I was
Square
born
Garden.
and raised. Listen, I know.
Okay, so when you're sitting on the subway,
Name one stop. I'll tell you what it is.
You can't miss the.
Name one stop. I'll tell you what it is.
59th Street. Name any train. Name any train.
I think you had
Name your
sugar
favorite
today.
train.
Sorry, I apologize.
I'm off sugar for Lent. Name your favorite train. I'll tell you my favorite. No one's fucking counting. Guys, come on. We're saving America. Listen.
When there's big projects like that nothing happens. It feels like when construction, where it's like the construction crew tells you, "Oh, we'll get this done in 3
that was
months,"
frickin'
and then
epic.
they take 3 years because they just want to squeeze it out. So it's like we have no faith in government getting shit done because we don't see a lot getting done.
Less faith. I think.
Less faith.
Yeah, I think, and that faith
I
has
have
been
almost
reduced.
none. I'm going to be completely transparent. I have almost no faith anything will get done.
And I think that is specifically positioned on liberals. I think that the Republicans have done a really good job of projecting that on Democrats. Like you hear a lot of rhetoric, whether it's right or wrong, whether there's data to back it or not, who knows? But they've done a really good job of going, hey, look at California. Look how California looks. Look at these cities. They spent this much on homeless people, and there are even more of them that are homeless. Right? And look at San Francisco. Look what's happening. People moving out of the city, et cetera. And I think they've done a really good job of marketing the perceived failures of Democrats in these states. How do you, as a Democrat, change that perception while not gaslighting the people who live there that do feel like their cities have I don't want to say have become ruined, but have definitely like decreased the standard of living.
Yeah, so I think first of all, you have to acknowledge why people are skeptical, and I do think that's. I mean, look, anybody who's been in a relationship knows that like if somebody's upset or pissed, like you don't start and say like you should feel better than you do. Actually, here's why you're wrong to be upset, right? Like we can't be caught doing that.
Is it easier doing that with a dude?
No, it's the same.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Fuck. This whole time I was like, man, at least you could be like, you're wrong, bro. And they'd be like, yeah, I was.
No, I'm sorry. My side's got a lot to offer, but it's that part. That part's the same.
There's no loopholes in relationships.
Damn. Okay, please continue.
Where was I? So part of it's kind of that approach. Part of it is to demonstrate the things that are going well or that can be done well. So we're talking about crime, right, in cities. And you would think if you watch like the Republicans that like every city is a like hellhole of crime. Now, if we respond and we're like, what crime? Then like obviously when you got like people getting pushed into the subway and you've got carjacking stuff, it's going to sound like we're just making shit up. If on the other hand we point to the fact that like Boston is at something like a 70-year low in the murder rate there. Or we point to the achievements in Denver under their mayor there about tackling some of the hardest problems in the world, like homelessness and housing. And having lived that as a mayor in a largely low-income community, like that is one of the hardest things that people working in government can ever try to solve, right? And there are people who are doing it well, and most of those people, in my experience, are Democrats. Now, they may not be like Washington Democrats or like federal, like congressional part of our party, but because I think the folks who are saying like government got this wrong, which might be true any number of times, what they're really saying is like the policies of this person in government got it wrong, but they don't have an answer. Their answer is burn it all down, right? If we haven't solved poverty, their answer is we're going to slash Medicaid, which is what the Republican budget moving through Congress right now will do, is slash Medicaid. Medicaid may not be perfect. In fact, I know for a fact, like many issues come up in the way it's administered, the way people have access to it. But I also know for a fact that if your answer to that is just to cut out a bunch of poor people, or VA, like any veteran can tell you, the horror stories of all the times things didn't go right in dealing with the VA. But if you think the answer...
Get my unpopular takes. I don't care. People complain about healthcare and shit because you only ever see when it goes wrong. But when healthcare is working fine, nobody fucking says anything about it. The overall polling on the VA is actually positive, and nobody seems to actually be aware of that. Nobody knows that overall the VA polls positively. But I feel like it's like airlines. If you ask people like, how do you feel about airlines? It feels like most people don't give you anything good about an airline. Oh, I really like this airline. Nobody says that. But if you had a bad experience with an airline, everybody's got some shit to say about a bad airline. I don't know.
The answer is to just cut it or privatize it. That's not an answer. Right. We can do better than that. And I think my party's job is to make clear what that looks like and how we would do it better.
Yeah, how would you do it?
Well, I would follow the lead of some of these mayors we're talking about who are solving some of these problems in a more localized area. City governments that make systems work better in ways that complicated federal systems like Social Security or like VA.
No, I mean, how would you get the messaging out? How would you help people realize good things are actually happening?
We had Mayor Adams on. We brought up the subway system and the perception that it's incredibly dangerous right now. And he was like, it's the safest it's been in X amount of years. He gave examples for, crimes being down. Now, there's other ways to like fudge these crime numbers. If you're not, what is the word where you actually punish people for the crime? If you're not prosecuting crimes, I guess you could say that these crimes didn't happen. So then all of a sudden it looks like crimes are down. So I think there are ways of fudging numbers.
Yeah, I mean, usually those numbers are based on arrests more than prosecutions, but yeah, I hear you.
He was giving me crime statistics, not arrest statistics, but sure. But still, he came and he gave me this data, or he gave us this data, and then we were kind of shocked. We were like, oh, I thought the subway was dangerous again.
Well, there's that perception and reality thing. I mean, back again to aviation, right? So a lot of folks are nervous flyers, don't know if it's safe to fly. Meanwhile, like I said, there was this horrible crash in January, but America went 15 years without a fatal commercial airline crash. Meanwhile, like the number of people who are going to die today in car crashes is basically the same as the number of people you can fit into a 737. And yet most of us...
President